I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to destroy something beautiful. I look at myself in the mirror now, hollow eyes, tired lines forming around what used to be a soft smile, and I barely recognize the woman staring back. Because once, not long ago, I was happy. I had a good life. A quiet life. A life most people would envy. A husband who adored me, who brought me tea in bed and ran his fingers through my hair when I cried over stupid movies. We had our routines, our rhythms. I knew the curve of his back better than I knew the layout of my office. And speaking of the office, that's where it started. That's where he entered the story. His name was Marcus. My boss. Charismatic. Commanding. Effortlessly intelligent. The kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. He never flirted, not openly. But his eyes always lingered a second too long. And I noticed. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Married women don't entertain fantasies. We don't. We shouldn't. But temptation doesn't always show up wearing red lipstick and whispers. Sometimes it wears tailored suits and smells like cedarwood and ambition. And sometimes, temptation walks behind you, late at night, into your office when everyone else has gone home. That's how it started. Late meetings. Harmless jokes. A hand brushing mine as we reached for the same folder. Laughter echoing through an empty office like we were the only two people in the world. And then, the first moment I realized the danger. He leaned in one evening, just a little too close, reading something over my shoulder. His breath warm near my neck. And I swear, the air between us shifted. My stomach clenched. My mouth dried. I stepped away quickly. Flushed. Confused. That night, I went home and climbed into bed beside my husband, Daniel. He kissed my forehead like he always did and pulled me close. But I lay there, wide awake. Thinking of Marcus. I hated myself for it. But I didn't stop. The next few weeks were a blur of boundary lines I kept moving. Texts that started professional and ended with "you make me laugh too much." Lunches that ran too long. My heart skipping when I saw his name light up my screen. And yet, Daniel never suspected. He trusted me completely. And I used that trust like a shield. No, like a weapon. One night, Marcus asked me to stay after hours again. He said he needed help preparing a client pitch. I told myself I was just being a good employee. But deep down, I knew exactly what I was walking into. That night, the air felt charged. Every glance was heavier. Every silence louder. And then, it happened. He touched my hand. Slowly. Deliberately. I looked up. And before I could even think, I leaned in. Our lips met. Brief. Electric. Wrong. We pulled back. Staring at each other like two people who just stepped off a cliff and realized there was no ground beneath them. I went home in silence. My hands shook on the steering wheel. My wedding ring felt like a brand. Daniel was asleep when I got in. Peaceful. Trusting. I sat on the edge of the bed and cried in silence. I told myself I'd end it. But I didn't. Over the next few weeks, it spiraled. It wasn't just a kiss. It became texts at midnight. Whispered conversations behind closed doors. Lingering touches. Then, it became physical. I betrayed Daniel in the worst way possible. And yet, I went home every night. Cooked dinner. Laughed. Made love to a man who had no idea his wife was living a double life. The guilt didn't stop me. It just made me better at hiding. But secrets don't stay secrets forever. And the way Daniel found out. It still haunts me. But I'll get to that. Because before the truth came out, there was one last moment of happiness. One last breath before the storm hit. It was our anniversary. Daniel planned a weekend getaway. A cabin by the lake. Just the two of us. No phones. No distractions. And I smiled. I kissed him. I held his hand. All the while, knowing what I had done. Knowing what I was still doing. That weekend, he looked me in the eyes and said, "You're the best thing that ever happened to me." And something inside me cracked. Because I wasn't. Not anymore. When the truth came crashing down. He didn't yell. He didn't throw anything or demand answers. He just sat there, staring at me like he was looking at a ghost. Like the woman he married no longer existed. And in a way, she didn't. I tried to speak. My lips trembled. My voice cracked. But every word I wanted to say felt like a lie. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I whispered. He blinked. But it did. Silence. I could hear the second hand ticking on the wall clock behind me, louder than my heartbeat. I was lonely, I finally said. That was the truth. Or at least, part of it. Not because Daniel didn't love me, he did. But because I stopped loving myself. Somewhere in the routine of happy marriage, I let my identity slip away. And Marcus, he noticed me. Not as a wife. Not as a partner. But as a woman. Daniel shook his head slowly. "You were never alone. You just stopped reaching for me." That line broke me. Because he was right. He would have held me. Fought for me. If only I had told him something was wrong. But instead, I reached for someone else. He didn't sleep in our bed that night. He stayed on the couch, staring at the ceiling, while I lay in the darkness upstairs, listening to every creak in the house we used to call ours. The days that followed were a blur. He went silent. Cold. Almost mechanical. We tried therapy. We tried talking. But the trust? It was gone. And when trust dies, love can't breathe. I cut things off with Marcus the very next day. He didn't even fight it. Maybe he was never really invested. Or maybe he saw what our selfishness had done and realized it wasn't worth it. Either way, he walked away easily. Daniel didn't. He stayed for a while. Longer than I expected. He tried. I could see it in his eyes. But I also saw the pain. The way he flinched when I touched him. The way he paused before saying "I love you," like he had to remind himself it used to be true. And one morning, he packed his things. He stood in the doorway with his suitcase, eyes red but dry. "I don't hate you," he said. "But I can't love you the same way anymore." And just like that, he was gone. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've done a lot of thinking. I still go to work. I still smile at people. But inside, I'm different. I look back at the woman I was, the one who thought she was invincible to temptation, and I don't recognize her. Cheating didn't just break my marriage. It broke me. Not because I got caught. But because I wasn't strong enough to stop myself. I lost a man who truly loved me, for moments of thrill and ego. Was it worth it? No. Not for a second. If you're listening to this and you're keeping a secret, ask yourself. Is the moment worth a lifetime of regret? Because I promise you, one choice can change everything. If you've ever been in a situation like this, tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if you're lucky enough to have someone who loves you deeply, hold on to them. Don't let silence grow between you. Not like I did.